When you work with a wealth advisor, and this is what I advocate, is that you find a trusted wealth advisor who has the professional credentials and experience, but more importantly, you want them to have your back. So if you're not understanding something, you want them to help you understand and take the time to explain what this is all about.
Today on Queen Me, I am joined by a woman who has spent more than 3 decades helping women rewrite their relationship with money, confidence, and well-being. Nancy Griffin is the founder of Women, Worth, and Wellness, a movement that empowers women to elevate both their net worth and self-worth through education, community, and intentional leadership. Nancy's work sits at the intersection of financial power, emotional well-being, and holistic health, giving women the tools to take control of their decisions, their futures, and ultimately their lives. She's a speaker, connector, and advocate who has guided generations of women towards building confidence, creating financial independence, and crafting meaningful personal and philanthropic legacies. Today, we're going to be diving deep into the myths, the mindset, and the science behind what it really takes for women to thrive. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Ashley, and I love the topic of your podcast. Really,
Thank
really, really fabulous. Really
Thank you.
fabulous.
Thank you. This is such a timely conversation, and I'm so excited that we can pick your brain and hear all about your work in women and financial power. So I'm really excited to dive in. And when we're looking at the landscape too, statistically and culturally, what do you think are some of the myths that are holding women back from financial independence?
They don't think they're worthy of stepping up and learning about it and taking the lead
Mm,
on building out their wealth.
absolutely. Because there's so much, I think, research that shows that women build, financial confidence, their well-being improves emotionally, professionally, physically. So why do you think money and confidence are so linked and so connected?
Well, women have not always been thought of as leaders when it comes to numbers. When we think about math and all those sorts of things, we think of men, when in fact women are very, very capable, very bright, and very, very able to surround numbers and make them work for them.
Mm, absolutely. Absolutely. So in your decades of work and your experiences, what patterns have you seen with how women underestimate their financial abilities? Because I think it's a lot of like a mind shift and a mindset shift that women need to make. So like, what have you seen with how women underestimate themselves and their
Yeah, it
financial
is.
power?
And I think the key to success is just being willing to learn, willing to step in the middle of it all and understand what all of the possibilities are. Obviously, you start with, when you work with a wealth advisor, and this is what I advocate, is that you find a trusted wealth advisor who has the professional credentials and experience, but more importantly, you want them to have your back. So if you're not understanding something, you want them to help you understand and take the time to explain what this is all about. I remember way, way, way back when I had this terrific client and she was 71 years old at the time. And she came to one of my seminars, and one of the guest speakers was talking about how you borrow to invest because the cost of borrowing you can write off as a tax deduction against borrowing to invest. So she wants to do this. She really got the bug, but she didn't understand. So she said, Nancy, tell me again how this all works. So I tell her, and then she'd repeat back, and I'd say, yes, that's right. And then she'd repeat, and then she'd go, yes, I've got it. And it wasn't much that she did. But really, she wanted to put herself in that game of borrowing to invest. So you haven't just transferred all of your wealth and your knowledge over somebody else to do it for you. She wanted to be an equal participant in having this as part of her whole wealth building scenario.
Ah, and that's the thing. So I have some thoughts and questions about, financial advisor and finding one and all those good things. But like when you think about maybe daily practices or like habits that can help you build this financial confidence? Is it part of it that too, like having these conversations and maybe doing a little bit of research and talking through it, just like you said that your client did?
Yes. Understand who are the markets? Who are the different stock markets? And familiarize yourself with them. You know, the S&P, the Dow 100, all those sorts of things. And daily you will see those performance numbers posted. And so even if you just get a glance on the morning news and find the news channel where it gives it to you or dial it up on your computer, then you're in the game. You're seeing that the market is continuing to go up. Obviously, a lot of the talk is, well, how far is it going to go? And is this another Y2K? Is there an AI bubble? What the heck is going on? So just little bits and pieces like that helps you be in the game of understanding what in the world is going on with regards to these financial markets.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I am in this generation where and I tended to do this, and I see some of my friends doing it too, where whatever we see on social media is like financial advice, or there's a lot of people that are posting about it, like we take that information, right, and we like run with it. And there are some books and things, but I feel like what we're getting is a lot of things online. So I'm curious, like where do you start with this, right? Like if I wanted to connect with a financial advisor or if I wanted to just start to build my confidence, what are some steps that I could do right now?
Okay, so all of those things that are coming at you are bits and pieces of information that you're taking in. And what you're asking me is how do I validate what's true and what isn't, and what's worthwhile and what isn't? And again, that's why a financial advisor, and I say a wealth advisor because it's all about total wellness as well as the financial aspect, is invaluable. And I'm a certified financial planner, and I know that it's a designation that's in the United States as well. And what you can do is just dial up CFP near me, and you'll see two or three names will come up. You'll see which one is closest to you. Maybe a couple are, dial them up, see who they are, phone them up, book an appointment with them. You know, their business is to serve you, their client. Now, if they feel that you don't have enough money to work with them, then your next question is, who would you recommend in my area that I reach out to? So one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And that's why at the outset I said, put yourself in the game, like put yourself in the game of finding out what this is all about and how it works and what I need to understand and how this can work for me.
Absolutely. So what's the difference between we might hear this a lot, like a financial advisor or fiduciary advisor, wealth advisor, like what are some of the differences there?
Okay, every advisor in the financial world has a fiduciary responsibility, meaning they are obligated by their profession to serve you to the best of your ability, rather than, recommending some investment that is going to give them 10 times as much commission, something like that. That person is not acting in a fiduciary manner. So fiduciary is just one of the requirements that is prevalent in the business in order for that financial person to stay in business. Financial advisor to me just talks to me only about managing your dollars and cents and your wealth, whereas a wealth advisor to me is someone who puts together a total wealth plan, and part of that wealth plan will anticipate health-related challenges. So what happens if you're diagnosed with breast cancer? What happens if you have a disability? What happens if you have premature death? Who is counting on your income? So that wealth advisor is taking a holistic approach to your whole being and guiding you all the way through your retirement, your starting a new business, your benefits plans where you work, your benefits plans that you might purchase for yourself if you're starting a new business. That wealth advisor is very much a holistic resource to you to help you be your best going forward as it pertains to dollars and cents. We know these days none of us can afford to be sick because more and more the medical coverage is either minimized or non-existent. So that's why it's in your best interest to stay as healthy as you possibly can. But at the same time, as we all get older, we need to anticipate health-related challenges. And how are we going to have sufficient financial resources to address those needs as we go forward?
Absolutely. And some of those topics I think too are a little bit scary to think about, right? Like if you're
Very
going to be
scary.
sick
That
or if
that's why
you
people don't,
all of that. So it's yeah.
that's exactly why
That's
people
that why
don't
people don't do
address
it.
them.
Yeah,
Right. It's like our bodies. That's why I put health
absolutely.
first because we take our bodies for granted. We get up and go, 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 and we keep on going until we're stopped for one reason or another.
Yes, absolutely. I remember I was talking with a potential financial advisor, and we were going over the questions that I thought would be normal, talking about job and income and all that kind of stuff. And then she said, "Well, do you have a plan if you pass away? Like, what's going to happen?" And that's not a thing that somebody necessarily prepares you for in a conversation, but I think for our generation, that's we need to be open and have these conversations. So, when do you recommend having these? When you're 18, 25, 30, when should you start talking with a financial advisor?
Okay, I'll give you a story, and that is this friend of mine was a trustee in an estate, so he became a guardian of a young child, and so he managed that part of that person's funds with a wealth advisor. So the young person is now turning 18, which means the jurisdiction will pass over to that individual, that 18-year-old. So he takes the 18-year-old to the wealth advisor for that transition conversation. And that wealth advisor says to the 18-year-old, I've been managing this portfolio all along, and now it will be my pleasure to manage it with you. However, I have two requirements. One is you must have a current will and estate plan, and the second is you must have an accountant. I don't do tax returns. I don't give tax. I do give some tax advice, but I don't do tax returns. So all of a sudden, this 18-year-old is being banged right over the head with, you have to think about your demise, and now you've got some wealth. So if you die, where do you want those dollars to go? Do you want them go to a family or do you want them go to a charity or is it a combination of both? So all of a sudden, this person has been put right in the driver's seat at the age of 18, making plans for their demise, which may not happen for another 80 years. But so my point is, when you're a teenager is a time when those topics need to come up. And often they come up as it pertains to their parents. And parents will say, well, if anything happens to me, these are the arrangements that I've made, or this is what, you don't need to worry yourself because I'm not going to die anytime soon. But just in case I get run over, like we never know. We never know. But smart people are people who anticipate worst case scenarios and put plans in place today in the event that something might happen.
What
And
topics for an
yeah, and one of the
18-year-old?
ways, one of the things that I learned was a great way to introduce the topic is to say, it's imagine it's the day after you have died. What does your world look like? So that immediately has that person
Mm.
thinking about, oh my goodness, I've got this, that, blah, blah, blah. But the thing these days is passwords. Does anybody know what my passwords are? So once you kind of get that mindset in place, then you can back it up from there and help that person put some plans in place that will address that potential reality.
Wow. That's even just a great first step is just like, you might not need it now, but here's where I put my passwords. Here are
Right.
those things. Wow. And it is a difficult conversation to have with your parents, but I feel like our generations now have gotten even more open with things, right? So we're able
Yes.
to have some of those conversations, right? And it's somewhat of a in a weird way, like almost like a bonding because you're connecting with your parent or your guardian or whatever and saying, I just want to be prepared and have these
Sure.
conversations.
Exactly.
Mhm.
The other thing too, this is kind of morbid, but I'll give you kind of a financial tip. With the affordability crisis, one of the best ways possibly to address that for a younger person is to purchase a life insurance policy on your parents or a parent so that when they die and you can pay the child can pay the premium so the parents don't have to do that. But you then being the beneficiary will have dollars coming to you. Now you're not buying it expecting them to die soon, but if they're in their 60s and their life expectancy is 90, then you know you've got 25 years. But at the end of 25 years, you've then got that insertion of cash into your own well being that could potentially really help things considerably.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So is this what you work on and talk about with Women Worth and Wellness? Can you talk to us more about your organization and the work that you do?
Well, I talk about a lot of things, but I normally start by talking about health. And again, I advocate for health the same thing I do with wealth, and that is have a trusted advisor. And if you don't currently have someone, which is more difficult to have your own personal family doctor, you know where your local hospital is. And they may have different seminars or events that they're offering to educate the public. If they're not, then it might be something that you could offer organizing. Like, do you have a resource? If I, schedule something for a Saturday afternoon, could you make available a guest speaker? And do you have a meeting room? So take a leadership role on your health to make sure that you're being as healthy as you possibly can be today, because you are the resource and you want to be as best as you possibly can be. And once you feel confident about your health, both today as well as going forward, then you can start focusing on your whole wealth scenario. And it just depends on where you're at. I encourage people, most banks will have an advisor with whom you can work, or they have an online um, app that you can work your way through. AI is a wonderful tool, and we're going to be partnering it with it forever. But at the same time, you really want to have that personal conversation with somebody to make sure that you really are on the right track. And once you get going, there are all sorts of different aspects to that whole wealth scenario that need to be taken into consideration. And a lot of what that wealth plan will consist of is based on that wealth advisor's dialogue with you, the client, in terms of where are you at currently? What are you working towards? What are the things that you've been thinking about? For example, you may have a corporate role currently, but you're thinking about starting your own business. That wealth advisor can give you some really good advice on how and when that might be a good thing to do, as well as some resources that he or she may have with whom you can interact to find out how you can get started. For example, it might be a good idea to get a line of credit and borrow to invest in your new company versus using some of your retirement funds that have been set aside, those cash funds to put into your business. So, it really just depends on you. And both the financial advisor and the wealth advisor, or both the health advisor and the wealth advisor, have the very same starting point, and that is talking to the client and understand where they're at and where they're coming from. But then the next step is getting their own professional read on the situation. For example, if you get a new doctor, first order of business is blood work because they want to have a confirmation that you are who you think you are. Same thing with a wealth advisor. It's called KYC, Know Your Client. And that is one of the requirements in that profession. If you have not taken the time to know your client as a wealth advisor, you are at risk of losing your licenses. Same way with the doctor not doing blood work. If you met with the doctor and you told him, well, this is what I'm thinking I'd like to do, and the doctor says, okay, here's a prescription for it, that should solve your problem. Then something happens, the doctor's at risk.
I love that analogy. And it's so helpful too to think about it in this way because a lot of people I think don't, think about their financial wellness in this way. Now, what kind of programs or offerings do you do through Women Worth and Wellness? What sort of programs do you offer?
Okay, so I used to have clients, I don't have clients anymore. I transitioned those over to another wealth advisor. But the Women Worth and Wellness brand was trademarked in 1994. So this year it will be 32 years old. And so I simply brought that brand out as a standalone business. And so what I do is I work with different wealth advisors to help them, to guide them and help them work with their clients, doing all of the things that I just suggested here. And so part of that is addressing different aspects of the whole business of women worth and wellness. I've spent a lot of time on philanthropy because more and more women are earning more, but now they're starting to inherit with a whole lot more to come. So all of a sudden, women have got this whole new power opportunity with their wealth. And how well do they know how to steward that wealth? The other little tip I'll give you is not every wealth advisor is a champion for philanthropy because a wealth advisor's success in the company with whom they're working is based on the amount of assets that you have under your jurisdiction. So that wealth advisor may not go out of his or her way to say, I really think you should donate $10,000 or five or 50, whatever, to a charity because those dollars are going to come away from the assets that that wealth advisor has under his or her jurisdiction. So that's why every woman needs to come as an equal partner in that conversation. And if you don't understand, you ask. And if you say, I'm thinking about doing something, this is a charity that, assume you have a sick relative who's just been diagnosed with cancer or whatever, and you've decided that you would really like to support the work they're doing and send them a large sum of money. How does that wealth advisor feel about that? The other thing that the wealth advisor will do is validate how effective that charity is because maybe they don't manage their monies under their jurisdiction as well as they should. Maybe there's been a fraudulent activity. So the word that I use frequently is women need to be extremely discerning, meaning you've got to lean into the situation. You've got to understand what's going on. You've got to ask as many questions as you can until, like my 71-year-old client way back when, you truly understand how this all works and how it's going to be beneficial to you and how appreciative you are of that person's input to your query.
Absolutely. And philanthropy is so important, but you also talk about, I think we call it daring and caring leadership for women. So what does that mean and what does that mean in practice?
It means just stepping up to these opportunities.
Hmm.
Because again, women kind of shy away from all of these different things. There could be a woman who has significant wealth in her jurisdiction who
Hmm.
just doesn't know and is just nervous about heading into figuring this all out. But in her heart, she would like to do something. She doesn't necessarily want to talk to a friend or a relative because she may not want to disclose the amount of wealth that she does have under her jurisdiction. So she just remains in park. And that's not good because once you step up and start into doing something, even a small amount with this wealth that you have under your jurisdiction, you'll start to feel a whole lot better. Like all of a sudden, your shoulders go back, and it's like, okay, I understand. And I see now how I really can make a difference. And I see now how that's going to be beneficial to me. That's where the net worth comes from because doing a charitable donation, it's a deduction from your tax return. So that shows that you're paying fewer taxes because you've given the money to a charity. And fast forward that to philanthropy and larger sums, even while you're alive or when you pass on, it will, the wealth advisor will show you a whole financial scenario and a bottom line effect if you
Hmm.
donate this amount, if you donate that amount. And normally in that final return, tax return, if you've given a significant amount to charity as part of your will and estate plan, in Canada, if you've given more than the taxes you would be paying this year, it goes back to the year before and
Hmm.
addresses some of those taxes. So really, really, really powerful. and really, really important to pay attention to all of the possibilities that can come from
Mm,
philanthropy and charitable giving, and also insurance. Most wealth advisors are licensed for both investments as well as insurance. And again, that's a good thing to keep in mind because in your whole portfolio, your whole wealth plan, you, excuse me, you want both.
mm. Now, you've been in this space for over 30 years and building this movement. What keeps you energized to keep doing this?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. Women Worth and Wellness is all about me, and I've done all sorts of different things, and I've had a lot of fun doing it, and added lots of value, I think, to the different events that we did. For example, we have two brain health organizations in Canada, and I wanted to do an event on women's brain health. And both of them said, okay, we'll work with you, but we need $10,000. Either raise it or write us a check. So the wealth advisor that I was working with at the time, neither of us wanted to do that. But I said, okay, during COVID, the whole brain health, mental health aspirations that people had often were addressed with your pets. They're the ones that kind of kept you sane and kept your mindset positive. So we did a big event with the local Humane Society. And we had four women come forward and tell their stories about how their brain health was enhanced during COVID with their pets.
Ah,
So,
love
you
that.
know, there are all sorts of different ways that you can bring this all forward. So, for me, it's just continually redoing this everything that this brand stands for, which is a lot because it's your health. So we can talk about women's health exclusively, which is a huge topic. Obviously the wealth topic. Net worth gets into tax returns and tax savings, and leading to self-worth is how you feel fabulous when you're a donor. More often than not, the recipient of that gift is the person who's given as much as the person who's received it. And then the whole business of philanthropy and legacy planning. And to your point, whether you're 18 or 98, you need to have your affairs in order in anticipation that something will happen. So all those different aspects of that total brand has so much content to build out in so many different ways. And in so many different ways for all the different generations. If you're a
Mhm.
10-year-old young girl, what do you need to be thinking about today to stay healthy so that you can live to be 100? Same thing with your wealth. And sometimes what parents do is they start off with that 10-year-old with an allowance, say it's $5 a week, and $1 goes to somebody else you care about. Is it the local food bank?
Mm.
Is it, young people's, what is it? And start that whole bit. This one young woman that I worked with, she said philanthropy begins at the dinner table. That's when,
Mm.
with your children, that's when you start to talk about because you are here at the dinner table with a meal in front of you and with other people who love and care for you. This is when we start the conversation about not every person in this world has that same privilege. So you
Mm.
can see how you can build this all out so that you're helping that person be a better person. But in doing so, you're helping the world be better as well, because the ripple effect is huge.
Mm. I love that so much. I love it. Love it.
One book that I just got a couple of months ago, it's Reverend Marianne Budd, Budde, and she's the Episcopal minister in Washington.
Mhm.
And she was the one who led the service the day after Trump was inaugurated. And
Oh,
her
yes.
her book is called How We Learn to Be Brave because she stepped up to him and said, "Please have
Yeah.
mercy." But she's now written another book and it's for young people, how young people learn to be brave. And I think that's so important that you get that attitude going in young people's minds and older people too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. Now, this sort of goes along the lines of that. We end every episode of this podcast with this question, and I'm excited to hear your answer. What does it mean to unleash your inner queen, and how do you tap into that power in your own life and leadership?
Well, first of all, you need energy. You
Mm.
need energy in order to be your best and do your best. And then you need to have the right attitude. And I tell people to live their lives like a split screen scenario. We all know what a split screen is. And it's always the negatives that pop up first and fade them to black. Like deal with them, but fade them to black quickly and then default to the positive. Like think of whatever you can, the fact that I'm here and my clothes are clean. This is a positive. And keep on going. I read somewhere recently that the more you focus on positives, the more positives will come to mind. So again, it's a ripple effect of positivity.
Mm. I love that. I love that. So true. Looking at the positive and making sure that you have that each day. I love that.
Right, right.
I love that.
And train your mind to go for the positives. Train your mind because the positives we take for granted. We take for
Absolutely.
granted.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us and also just for all of the information that you shared. Of course, we'll include all the links and everything in the bio here, but you've helped so many women across generations really claim their independence and their worth and really build legacies anchored in courage and clarity. So I just appreciate all that you do and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ashley, and all that you do because think about all your listeners. You're being a great catalyst in bringing speakers to their attention for their enhanced well-being. And so they can bring their uniqueness forward, which is a privilege.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. And to learn more about Nancy's work and any programs and hear from her directly, you can visit womenworthwellness.com and follow her on different platforms. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review because every time you do, you help another woman step into her power and unleash her inner queen.